Okay, so we basically looked at this case study, we looked at the images presented to us, but let's quickly go and answer the questions. Now, I have the questions here in front of me on a piece of paper, and I'm just going to read the question to you, and I will answer it on the tablet over here. So the first question, and what we discussed most of it. The first question asked, refer to the article with what can you compare this intense tropical cyclone. Now, if you go and have a look at what's given to us, we can compare this tropical cyclone. It's equivalent to Category 3 hurricane. So the correct answer over there is Category 3 hurricane. Now, I've mentioned that to you before. The Americas refer to tropical cyclones as hurricanes. Okay. Our next question, question 1.3.2. Name one condition that was necessary for the formation of a tropical cyclone. Now, I've mentioned it to you just before the ad break. There's quite a few of them, and I'm going to write only 4 of them down, but so you can remember. So, what do we need? We need ocean temperatures. I just want to write there, very important. Ocean temperatures above 27 degrees Celsius. We can also say we need Coriolis force, like I explained it to you. That's the reason why they don't form at the equator, because there's not enough Coriolis force. We can also have friction-free surface. And lastly, we can mention it needs to form, I just want to write this, it only can form between 5 degrees and 25 degrees north and south of the equator. Okay, the simple reason why from the equator, this is where we experience the warmest ocean temperatures. Okay, that's why I've mentioned earlier as well, we looked at it, usually late summer, early autumn. This is when we will experience the highest ocean temperature. Think about it. The ocean warms up throughout summer. Okay. Very similar to a swimming pool, just to give you a scenario. Okay. The morning, early morning, you jump into the swimming pool. What's the water going to be like? It's going to be cold. Am I correct? So during the day, the swimming pool water heats up on a beautiful summer day. Late evening, no, early evening, you jump into the swimming pool, let's say 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. What's the water like? It's going to be nice and warm. Similar to the oceans. Okay, it takes much longer for the water to warm up because the insulation travels, it penetrates the water. Okay, so late summer, early autumn. And last one that we can add over here, we basically need large scale of evaporation. And a very high moisture content. Okay, so let's quickly move to question 1.3.2 and question 1.3.3, apologies. Mention, refer to the image and determine the expected wind speed and which tropical cyclone Idai will reach the coast of Mozambique. So we need to refer to the image. So it means the answer is on the image. So let's just quickly have a look at it. So they basically asked, refer to the image and what's the expected wind speed that Idai will reach when it reaches the coastline of Mozambique. So there's Mozambique, am I correct? There's the coastline. Okay, and as you can see, the amount of wind speeds, the wind speeds amounts are being shown with these lines over here. And as you can see, the correct answer will be 120 kilometers. Okay, this is 1.3.3. I want to go back to that image. So 120 kilometers per hour. Now, keep in mind, please have a look at this. When we look at this diagram, let me just quickly clean up a little bit over here. Okay, so there's quite a lot of information being given to us. There is the eye of the tropical cyclone. Okay, I've mentioned that. So the worst storm will be experienced in the southwestern quadrant. It's this quadrant over here. Why? Because it's moving into that direction. Okay. It's moving in a southwesterly direction in the tropical easterlies. So it basically pushes the isobars closer together. As you can see, look at the wind speeds over there. 150 kilometers per hour. So closest to the eye wall, closest to the eye, we experience the worst weather. Now, as you can see, as it hits the land, the coastal area, immediately what happens? The tropical cyclone becomes weaker. Because what happens? It hits the coastline. So it means it's busy losing its source of energy. And what's the source of energy? The warm, moist ocean water. Okay. As you can see, as it travels further inland, loses even more of its wind speed, 85 kilometers and 50 kilometers. And like I've mentioned, there you can see Zimbabwe. Okay. By this time, when it reaches 50 kilometers per hour, it dissipates. It dies out because it lost most of its energy. Okay. It can happen when it hits close to the 30-degree latitude line. It starts to recurve. Especially it happens in Florida state of the Americas, Northern America, when it regains energy because it's going back to the ocean. But seldomly happens here in the southern hemisphere. Okay. If we look at question 1.3.4, and the question states, why will the wind speed decrease as you move further from the eye? Now, I've just explained it to you. Okay. The wind speed will decrease when we move further away. Why? Because the isobars are not so close together, and because the isobars, the tropical cyclone has made landfall. Okay, so that's the correct answer for 1.3.4. So what can we say? The correct answer is the pressure decrease when you move away from the eye. Okay, we can also just mention, like I've shown you, I'm just going to draw this image again, it's important, on a synoptic chart. If you look at a tropical cyclone, the isobars are very close to one another when you're close to the eye. So obviously, what does it mean? When the isobars are close to one another, we experience very strong winds. When the isobars are far from one another, we experience gentler winds. Okay, if we look at question 1.3.5, and the question states, explain how the dangerous semicircle of tropical cyclone Eli originates, develops. Now, I've mentioned this just before the ad break. How does that semicircle develop? First of all, we need to look at the characteristics, that ocean temperatures. Okay, we're experiencing 27 degrees above 27 degrees Celsius temperatures, high humidity. Okay, now how does the eye develop? And let's quickly have a look at it. There's usually the circulation and forward movement in the same direction. And it's basically the wind speed with the movement of the tropical cyclone. Okay, now let's just quickly go and have a look at our last question, question 1.3.6. In a paragraph of 8 lines, suggest the negative impact that the high wind speeds will have on the coastal areas of Mozambique. Now, grade 12s, I've mentioned this. Usually, most of the time, I can guarantee you, it's such a familiar question, paragraph question, in all the past papers. And I want you to go and pay attention. So, in this question, they didn't only ask you about economical. Think social, think environmental. I'm going to write all 3 of them down. No, sorry. I just want to get my spelling correct. Okay. Economical. So they ask, what impact is wind speeds going to have economically, socially, and environmentally? Okay, that's quite simple, but let's start economically. Think of houses, think of infrastructure, think of businesses. We're talking about wind speeds 180 kilometers per hour. So, especially on the coastline, right? The coastline is being washed by waves. I've mentioned it just before the break. We're talking about storm surge. Storm surge is the increase of wave length because of the wind movement across the surface area of the ocean. So what happens? The waves are getting bigger, bigger, and bigger. We're talking about 6 meters high waves bashing into the coastline. Imagine you have a small restaurant on the coastline of Mozambique. Now, Mozambique is quite a touristy destination. A lot of South Africans go there. There's beach bars, restaurants, people go there, enjoy, have a good time. Imagine you had a beachfront property. What's the wind going to do to your business? First of all, economically, it's going to storm surge. Okay. Storm surge, I'm just going to write waves, destroy infrastructure. Okay, that's one example. Now keep in mind, this storm can cause quite a lot of chaos. It can damage infrastructure. I'm talking about roads. So it's going to make it difficult for emergency services to be able to attend. So socially, what's going to happen? Loss of life. Okay. What else can it do? It can cause injuries. Okay. Objects can hit people as this wind blows. It can kill animals. It can injure animals. It can injure people. So we've mentioned loss of life. I'm just going to write there injuries. Okay. What else can we mention? We can also mean, if we go in socially, economically, I just want to write down there. I just want to go down a little bit. Okay. It may lead to unemployment economically because it destroyed the businesses. Okay. So we can also have a look at it environmentally. What can it cause environmentally? What damage can it do to the environment? Now think of a storm surge, wave bashing against the coastline. First of all, erosion. And when we're talking about erosion, might mean, depending how far the storm is going inland, depending how far it goes in, it can cause erosion, because we're not talking about the storm surge, but we're talking about the amount of water because we experience flooding. So what happens with this eroding? Topsoil, we're talking fertile soil, goes lost. Okay. Another thing that we can mention over here, we can mention biodiversity being disrupted. Okay. Biodiversity being disrupted. So we're talking about fauna and flora. We're talking about animal and plant species. Okay. Now, we can even talk about deforestation, because trees are being uprooted. Okay. So even trees being uprooted by these massive winds, strong winds. Now, I want to mention an important one as well, because, and I want to integrate, I'm going to go back to economical over here, and I'm just going to write down at the bottom, and I want to explain it to you, because we're basically explaining urban settlements. If you look at Mozambique, it's a developing country, right? Now, developing countries mainly focus still on what? Primary activities. And when we look at primary activities, we're talking about fishing and farming. Now, with a storm with this type of magnitude, you'll definitely not be able to fish. And it's a stable food for many Mozambican people. Now, let's assume he was a farmer with crops. Most of the time, if you look at it, unfortunately, all these crops are going to be destroyed. And once again, if we look at fishing, I'm just going to write there no fishing. And in this case, if the crops are being destroyed and no fishing is going to take place, it's going to create what? Very important term, food insecurity. Okay. Once again, what does food insecurity mean? It doesn't mean that we need to look after food. It means that you don't have enough food on a daily basis. Okay. The fish that these men used to caught on the coastline, not there anymore to feed their families. The crop that was planted to feed his family is not there anymore. It's been washed away. So now all of a sudden, we might have people starving. Okay. And that causes a great consequence. Now, not only economically, but now we're moving to a social consequence. It may lead to a hunger. Okay. May lead to loss of life. Importantly as well, not only does it create food insecurity, but even with the disease, if you look at Mozambique, it's got a very weak infrastructure. Now, you need to keep in mind, it's a hell of a lot of rain over a very short period of time that fell. So what's going to happen? Sewage are going to be flooded. Okay. It's usually the consequences, the after what happened, that causes the most damage. Why do I say that? Because diseases such as cholera breaks out. Because their infrastructure is completely weak. So they don't have enough resources to make sure that the basic needs are being protected. And even the housing infrastructure is extremely weak. It's not built to regulations that might cause death or injury to the people. Okay, so once again, grade 12s, think economical, social, environmental. Always. Doesn't matter from what aspect you could look at it. But keep in mind, I'm going to be honest with you, not much is positive about a tropical cyclone. Okay, usually very negative consequences. Okay.